Peace, family. My name is Vicki Dillard for African Diaspora News Channel. Thank you so much for tuning in, family. I've done broadcasts here in times past on Tucker Carlson to include his shock and awe and his absolute delusion when he acknowledged on one of his podcasts that he had never even heard of a Black Hebrew Israelite. He didn't believe in the veracity of that. He didn't believe that was true. He didn't even know how that could be possible. And so he always says this other stuff. And even though you see white folks like him coming out, they're no longer working for official cable news conglomerates like Fox News and so forth anymore, like he was known for, they still maintain their little, anti-Black imperialist mindsets. They try to blur the lines in other areas like they real patriots and stuff like that. And they want us to come along with 2 or 3 things that they believe in now that they've come to the light, and they say all the stuff they've done for their careers and years and decades in some instances, all should be forgiven and overlooked. They've come to the light. But one thing they keep in them is that anti-Blackness when it comes down to the bottom line. Well, he was on Morgan Pierce's show recently. And among other things, he was talking about, of course, he was discussing problems that he actually had with Trump, even though right? So he goes on to Piers Morgan's show and says this. Watch this.
I'm worried about that. I mean, I don't see how this is fixed. Starmer, who's, he's just an instrument of larger forces, but he's a poisonous character, obviously, who's really hurt your country. He's in there for, 4 more years? And so you wonder, people are going to start to get really radical in a scary way. I think this is going to happen. And the people in charge don't seem to care.
Well, you're already seeing it. You are seeing the anger beginning to manifest itself. And I completely understand the anger. I don't like you. I abhor any form of violence. But I do understand the anger when you have, Keir Starmer campaigned, I'm going to smash the gangs that allow these little boats to come over the channel, delivering tens of thousands of people illegally into the country. And they then get put into these so-called asylum hotels where they're given a pretty good lifestyle, certainly a far better lifestyle than many people really struggling at the moment in the UK. And of course, far from smashing the gangs, it turned out yesterday that he's smashing new records for the number of people coming in illegally on the boats. Of course. It's out of control. And the British public are reaching a point of saying, we are done with people coming in illegally and being treated better in a more comfortable and more luxurious manner than we treat our own people.
Well, the whole point is to humiliate and degrade the indigenous population of the British Isles, the white population. I mean, that's the whole point. And are they really going to do something about it? What would that be exactly? You'd really have to force a lot of people to go back to their countries of origin, millions of people, and you need to do it really soon.
Family, that's it. I mean, is this comedy or is this a real political show? I think it's a comedy show. Talk back to me, somebody. He is in absolute denial because he said with a straight face that the notion of the immigration issue that the British Islands have, and of course, that being Europe, among others, he's saying that the issue with the government allowing them, the darker people of the world, I'm paraphrasing now, of course, that's who he's talking about, the most melanated people, to come in to Europe. He said it's to humiliate the indigenous people, which are white folks. He specifically said white people. Sir, now I could go real deep today, and I could get into even the history, for example, among many other receipts about the ancient Sibyls that were known under many names. Whenever I use the word Sibyls, that just simply means a prophetess, a Black prophetess in particular. They were the original Vatican before it was taken over. The literal place where the Vatican is situated was actually the original location where these actual women were prophesying. Yes, believe it or not. I discuss these things and more in my monthly mastermind school, the Vicki Dillard Mystery School, and some of my special courses that I do outside of my monthly school. You can learn more about that at my website at vickiplanet.com. Watch this. But I found this older article from the BBC, and I decided to go this route. This is from a few years ago, from 2020. The headline headline says the Black British history you may not know about. Now, I'm barely touching the surface, but I want to seed out enough information to let you all know in recent times without even going back hundreds and for that matter, even thousands of years. I want us to just stick with some recent stuff that's going to kind of muddy the waters for those of you that believe such things. This piece written by Cameron Verk says that it's talking about how I guess it came to write this article in terms of the death of George Floyd in America has inspired thousands of people in Britain to demand justice. It says, marching through the streets of our biggest cities, Black Lives Matter protesters here insist that the UK is not innocent, but some commentators have questioned whether racism existed in Britain and to what extent. Child, if y'all don't stop, just the idea that you've been saying, did it exist in Britain? Lord have mercy. It goes on talking about how the main thing, according to this article, that they were taught in terms of history there is the transatlantic slave trade and the U.S. civil rights movement. It says was largely the main Black history taught in the UK schools, which I thought that was pretty interesting. Anyway, I'm skipping. It says that there are a few episodes of Black British history we weren't taught in school, the writer says. Number one, the Ivory Bangle lady. How many of y'all have heard that? My family in the UK, particularly my Black Britons. It says here, some might think the first Black people in Britain arrived from Britain's colonies, because white folks love to say that they want you to think that you was imported in. Some might think that the first Black people in Britain arrived from Britain colonies, the countries in Africa, the Caribbean, and Asia that Britain ruled over in some cases for centuries after World War II. That's not true, says Lavinia from the Black Curriculum. We know that Black people were in Britain since the Roman times, and there's specific examples. See, that hits a little bit on the ancient Black civils, who were actually those that populated those areas long before the Dorian, the Anglo-looking, the white-skinned folks that we call Greeks and Roman. As soon as we hear anything related to that, we turn the other way because we're so used to it being white-skinned folks, not knowing that we were actually Aboriginal and the original folks in those lands too. Watch this. Back to this. Let me read this again. The Ivory Bangle lady is the name given to remains discovered in York in 1901, which are now on display in the York Museum. Archaeological analysis reveals that although she was born in Roman Britain, she's likely to be of North African descent. The remains have been dated to the second half of the 4th century. She was found with jet and elephant ivory bracelets, earrings, pendants, beads, and blue glass jug and a glass mirror. In other words, she wasn't poor. It puts into question assumptions that Black people have never been aspirationally wealthy or had any kind of wealth, Lavinia says. She gives other examples like Henry VIII, Black trumpeter. It talks about during the Tudor period, it says hundreds of Black migrants living in England. For those of us who are a bit rusty on our Tudor dates, we're talking about the 1500s. Now, I know some of you will probably still be thinking, well, they were still imported in. Let me tell you all something. Again, I'm going to just play with you right now, just leave it on the surface. But let me just give you some general facts. The most ancient human being on the planet, the most ancient group of human beings on the planet are Black people. The most ancient human being on the planet is the Black woman. We are the original people on the planet. And when you touch and when you research everybody's mitochondrial connections, it all goes back to their very Black mama. We understand that the land mass over years, due to geographical changes and other such phenomena, has shifted the original layout of the earth. And so, in other words, what we know as the 7 continents and then the many nations therein very likely look very different. But nevertheless, we don't even need to go that deep. If we're the most ancient people on the planet, why we sit up here playing like y'all just popped up over some part of the world by yourself? You see how they don't match? You see how they don't even make sense? We know that y'all whitewashed the Grecian history, Roman history, but that we're the original, which is why we keep seeing traces of stuff everywhere. There is no place on the planet where we're not indigenous to, but I just want to give you some fairly recent types of examples with these names. Other ones that are mentioned in here that has some very interesting centuries-old connections is Britain's. It says Britain's first Black queen. They put it with a question. It says she was a princess from Germany who became a British queen after marrying King George III. And many historians believe Queen Charlotte had African ancestry. They married in 1761, and Charlotte was the mother of two British monarchs, George IV and William the Sixth. I'm skipping. It goes on talking about other things, such things as this other section is called Hidden in Plain Sight about Queen Charlotte, whether she had African ancestry or not. It says that she joined the royal family in the century when Britain started slave trading, which made it vastly wealthy. There's a lot of stuff y'all can't explain just in recent stuff. Recent meaning 400-500 years ago. And Tucker Carlson is the same one that don't believe that the Black Hebrews are Black, that the original Hebrews are Black. Can't wait to see what y'all got to say about it. Y'all be sure to go to my website at VickiPlanted.com and check out what I've got going on. I have so many wonderful products and services, a luxury magazine, special academies that are going to be just for men and some just for women. Of course, I do my monthly mastermind. Your life will never be the same. If you want something you've never had, you got to do something you've never done. Tap in. Go to my website at VickiPlanted.com to learn more. Be sure to join my email list so that you're receiving direct notification of everything I got going on. I can't wait to see you again.